Hello friends, today we will learn how to set up Visual Studio Code for Python development. So let's start. Okay. So in order to set up Visual Studio Code for Python development, first step you need to do is you need to go to python.org. In download section, you need to install Python 3 for your system. So I am using Windows, so I have installed Python 3.11.4 for my Windows setup. Okay. Once you download and install Python, um, let's go to Visual Studio Code and we can see how to use Python interpreter. Okay. So in Visual Studio Code, basically whatever we work on, we need to create a workspace. Workspace is nothing but a folder in which our Python code will exist. So you can go to files, you can go to open folder, you can create a folder in any of your drives. So I have created this Python environment as a directory and I select this folder. Okay. So Python development is easy in Visual Studio Code. You just need to install Python as I mentioned earlier. That's it. Now in this workspace or folder, you can just create a simple Python file called hello.py. Oh, okay, sorry, one more thing. Before creating Python file, you need to install one extension. Okay, for Python. So you can go to extension here. You can search for Python. Okay, when you search for Python, there by default there is one extension from Microsoft. Basically extension helps in debugging, linting, and basically auto suggestions. For all those functionality, this Python extension helps, and it also searches for the Python executable in our system so that it can use that interpreter to execute a program. Okay, I have installed this. You need to install this. Once you install this Python extension, you can directly create a Python program. So I'm creating hello.py file. Okay, here is my file. Okay, and I have pasted one Python code, simple Python code of hello world and addition program. Okay, now I have this Python program. If I want to run this Python program, I can directly come here on run button. I can, so you see run Python file by default. When you click on this, um, it says that okay, diff, uh, it couldn't find Python interpreter, so we can select. So I think, yeah, let's select. So by default you see here, there are two Python, this extension could find in my system. So I will use the latest one which we just downloaded. Now once select, and when I run this program again, you see my Python program is successfully executed. So Python development in Studio is as simple as that. You just need to install Python and you need to create a Python program, and you can run it. Okay. So now let's debug this program. In order to debug this program, just besides this run button, there is this functionality called debug Python file. If you click on this debug Python file, this Python program will run in debug mode. Okay, so you can run this in debug mode. So you can come to any line you see here, red dot. You can create a breakpoint wherever you need, and you can again run on this debug option. So whenever you select run or debug by the extension of workspace, basically Visual Studio Code understands that and basically remembers it. So when you click again on this run button, it will run this program in debug mode, and you see here we can see our breakpoint. Basically the program is halted at this breakpoint. Here you can see watches, you can see variable values. So current variable value for a is 10. Here you see controls. Okay, here you can step into if there is a function. So I'm step over. I have clicked on step over. Now you see my program has come here at this line. I can add variables just like this. If I want to see what is the value of c, as of now there is no value. When I step over, I can see value of c is 30. Likewise, you can basically go into function auto into you can watch various variables using this debug functionality. Okay, I will just run this, continue this program, and that's it. Okay, so this is how you can debug Python programs. Okay, okay. Now, one more functionality for Python is like, by default when we debug our program, extension is using default Python which we have installed to debug this program. Now sometimes happens that if you want to um, run your if you are working on a large project and you want to configure your own debug scripts, like you want to uh, give path for your to your own Python installations, Python extension, or you want to configure some input parameters for this program. So for that you need a launch.json file, basically a configuration file where you can specify all these different parameters. Okay, so when you debug this program, you can also debug this program from here left hand side. When you click on this run and debug, here you see you can create a launch.json file. Okay, for Python. So as soon as you click on that option, you see here launch.json file is created in our workspace, which specifies default parameters like what is the name of this configuration, what is the type, what type of program is you will be executed with this configuration and all. Okay, so now let's say I have a program and I want to this is my program and I want to provide it some arguments. Okay, some arguments. Let me paste a code to get arguments. Okay, um, yeah. I have this program here. I basically this program accepts few arguments. Now how can I pass these arguments to this particular program? Okay, you see it's not there. So I can quick fix and import args. Okay, okay. So as you see, this program takes user and age as argument, but how can I provide arguments to this particular program? So all this functionality can be specified in launch.json. How you can do, you can just add args here. Okay, you can provide hyphen hyphen user, and you can provide whatever argument you want to specify. Okay, so I want to pass this argument to this particular program when I run this program using this launch.json. Now I can use that, I will simply go to command palette. Okay, I will go to the select and start debugging. You can type like select and select, basically, sorry, select and start debugging. So basically it allows me to select any of my configuration. Okay, you see, so this name Python current file, this name has come from the configuration what configuration name we have here. Okay, so using that I can select this particular configuration to run this program, and as soon as I click on it, okay, you see okay, there is some invalid syntax. Sorry, let me try to debug it. Okay, since we had this breakpoint, it stuck here. So I run this program, and if I print these arguments now, okay, and I again debug using my interpreter, which I have in my configuration file, I should be able to see arguments which I have passed. Oh, I think we did not, we wrote print statement. So I see args, that's it. I run my program again using that interpreter. Now you say, right, I have provided this user argument from this configuration file here. Okay, so likewise you can use this launch.json to provide user argument. This is one of the use case of using launch.json for debugging Python programs. You can specify various parameters. You can even change your Python executable. So by default it's using um, some Python interpreter. Basically whatever we have installed, you can change the path also using launch.json. Okay, this is one use case I wanted to discuss. Another thing is virtual environment. So basically uh, in large Python projects or modules are basically run in their own virtual environment. So virtual environment is nothing but a context in which Python programs run. So basically if there are two projects parallelly we are running, so various dependencies and packages of these two projects can conflict with each other. So that's why we create virtual environment to separate out the environment for Python programs. So how you can create virtual environment in Visual Studio Code uh, is basically you go to command palette, you say uh, maybe you can env. Okay, if you say env, or you go to, hold on, so there is create environment, right? You can say create environment. As soon as you click on create environment, there are two options. Virtual environment conda, I will use virtual environment. As soon as I click, it allows me to select a interpreter, basically Python executable. I will use the latest one which we have downloaded and installed. Okay, as soon as I click on this, there you can see dot hidden directory virtual environment. So this basically what this is a folder which will have all the dependencies and packages which will be used throughout this workspace. Okay, so you see by default it installs pip, Python, uh, all the base packages. Okay, so now if I want to use this virtual environment, I for this particular Python program, what I will do, I will go here, run button. I will say run Python file, run Python file. Okay. So as soon as I run Python file, uh, okay, virtual environment is not selected. In order to select virtual environment, I need to change my interpreter. So how I can change? I go to command palette. I say select interpreter. Okay. Here you see we were seeing only two. Now there is a three, which is virtual environment. Okay, I will select this one. Now if I run this particular Python file using run Python file in the terminal, let me remove all these terminals and again run this Python file. Okay, you selected that interpreter. Now when you run this particular Python program, you will see in the interpreter that it is trying to install, basically run this Python program in that virtual environment. It's trying to activate it. Okay, so a lot of time we face this issue. By default the virtual environment is not activated. Why? Because it's trying to activate because terminal is using PowerShell by default. You need to change it. So how you can do is in the terminal window, besides plus button there is default profile. Okay, so by default I think it's PowerShell. You can change it to CMD. Okay, because CMD allows to run script. PowerShell by default doesn't allow to run script. Okay, as soon as you do that, you change the profile, and now if you run this particular Python file again, uh, let me remove this terminal and now let me run this Python file again. Okay, you see here, first of all, extension has activated our virtual environment. Okay, in .venv scripts using activate script, and it has run this particular hello.py file using this Python, which is part of our virtual environment. Okay, so that's how you can set up virtual environment in order to run your Python programs in a secluded separate environment. So now you see here in the command prompt also, there it shows .venv. So basically it is executing this program in virtual environment. Now if you run any, if you install any more packages here, okay, pip install, I'm installing Flask for, let's say, my web development. Okay, now it will install all these packages in for this particular namespace only, not for a global Python which is installed in the system. You see here Flask is installed here in our virtual environment. That's how, and I can use Flask now, whatever I have installed. Okay, okay, that's where this particular basically virtual environment helps. Okay, now last thing, so lot of times we need to enable and disable various settings. So how you can enable and disable various settings for Python specifically, you need to go to command palette. You can say open user setting. Okay, now when you click on open user setting, there is this extension. You need to go to extension, then there we have installed Python extension. I can go to Python extension. Now all the user settings for a particular Python extension is listed here. You can read about it and select, deselect various, change various configurations for a Python extension here. Okay, that's how we can develop Python programs and large Python projects using Visual Studio Code. I hope this video helps you to set up Visual Studio Code for Python. Thank you.